So hello there guys and welcome back to a brand new episode of the DNF1 F1 Podcast. I hope that you guys are well, and just like that we are back with another episode, another Grand Prix preview. This time we are heading to Mexico for the Mexican Grand Prix just after the US Grand Prix. Will the Mexican Grand Prix live up to the excitement and the tension that we got from that titanic battle in Austin between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen? Time will tell. But joining me on this episode of the DNF1 F1 Podcast, a familiar face and friend of the show, and of course going to Mexico, who would we rather be talking to about this race than the wonderful Manena, otherwise known as A Girl Talks Formula One. Manena, first of all, ¿cómo estás? How are you doing?
Hi, Adam. Muy bien, ¿y tú? All is good. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this weekend the whole year, so I can't believe it's finally arrived.
It really does feel very exciting to be going to Mexico. I always love the passion of the Mexican Formula One fans. Of course, huge motorsport fans with a great, rich heritage, strengthened even more so by the fact that we have a Mexican driver with a very competitive car with a very good chance perhaps of winning on home soil. I mean, just to describe all that excitement and emotion, how would you describe what it will be like in Mexico this weekend if Checo Perez goes on to take the crown on Sunday?
I mean, last season, people went crazy because he was the first Mexican on the podium in the Mexican Grand Prix. So if he wins, I don't even know what's going to happen. Like, as you said, Mexicans are really passionate. So I am sure people are going to go crazy. I'm definitely going to be one of them, especially because this is something that we basically waited since Checo Perez went to Red Bull, you know? And yeah, you were saying something about the Austin Grand Prix earlier. I don't know if the race is going to be as exciting because, in my opinion, Austin was one of the most exciting races of the season so far. But then again, you have so many Latinos in Austin. Checo Perez was like the driver with the biggest fan base there. See, the cars are already rolling here in Mexico.
You can't keep them
yeah,
away.
yeah, no, the Mexican Grand Prix basically started since yesterday. People are already like prepping up. There's already so many events and so many things happening that it's exciting, really exciting.
Yeah, I echo those thoughts exactly. I mean, obviously, you know, coming from the United Kingdom, it's a very passionate country when it comes to its live sport, especially its racing.
Yeah.
We've been very blessed to have a plethora of Grand Prix winners and world champions. Of course, we have the likes of Sir Lewis Hamilton, for example, who's very much flying the flag at this point in time for the UK. Of course, other drivers like Lando Norris and George Russell, to name a few, definitely the future of the sport. It's very hard. I can understand why it might be very hard for a country like yours in Mexico, where you don't often get as much talent in the higher echelons of motorsport for one reason or another. It's not necessarily always about just the talent alone. There are other factors at play here. But how would you describe the unanimous support that someone like Checo Perez has for an entire country? And also, what kind of pressure do you think will be on his shoulders this weekend, having to deal with a home crowd and the home support that Mexico offer?
You know, that's the only thing that scares me so much. I think that since Max Verstappen already became world champion, there is a slight, I'm not going to say huge, but there is a slight possibility for Checo to be supported by the team for him to win. I'm not saying that in Brazil or Abu Dhabi, Max is going to let Checo win. No. But in Mexico, I do think that he does have a certain respect for his teammate, and he's been so grateful to Checo for so many things that he's done that has helped Max get victories or even his championship last season, you know? So we all know what the pressure is like in motorsports, right? We've seen it with Jacques Leclerc. When pressure gets to him, he tends to sabotage himself. And this has, not always, but it has happened to Checo Perez as well. So I really do hope that if the team helps him, that he's in the right mindset to actually do whatever it takes to win. And as in for Mexican drivers, I mean, I feel there's so much talent. There's just not enough sponsors or money, let's say. So at this moment, there is so many Mexican drivers that are kind of in the line of who could eventually get to Formula One, you know? But then again, it's not going to depend on them. I mean, we see Pato O'Ward, right? He has so many sponsors. He's got the talent. He's got the charisma. He looked like a Formula One driver, yet he's still not driving for Formula One. So it's one of those things where you wonder, why not? You know? I don't know. So it's a bit of a strange situation when it comes to deciding who gets to Formula One and who doesn't. So I really do hope that all of these Mexican legacies eventually make it to Formula
Absolutely.
One.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you know, I'm really glad you brought up Pato O'Ward because it's a great example, again, of a driver who has shown his craft in other series like IndyCar, for example. He's, you know, very popular and very talented there, been very successful there as well. He's had outings quite recently with McLaren, you know, obviously doing some testing from there in FP1, in Austin, I believe it was. So it's one of those where you really need opportunities to come, and perhaps the best example or the best way to encourage sponsors and provide more opportunities for young and up and coming Mexican men and women drivers and other unspecified genders, of course, not to mention as well. It's one of those where I feel like if someone like Checo Perez could win the Grand Prix this weekend in front of a home crowd, it really will be a huge boom, positive boom, of course, for Mexican racing. And as you mentioned already, you know, encouraging other sponsors to get involved and look at young Mexican drivers, perhaps drivers that will not have an opportunity to get into the higher echelons of motorsport without the financial backing, something that other countries have been very privileged with by comparison. But so it's a really, really good point that you brought that up. Obviously, Manena, it's been a while since you've been on the show with us, so obviously we might as well do a little bit of housekeeping and catch up, really. And how have you been, and what have you been up to on your channel? Obviously, people that don't follow your content yet definitely should. Of course, I'll plug it in the show notes later on, but it's A Girl Talks Formula One on Instagram, Twitter, and also on YouTube as well, with a Mexican version for any Spanish-speaking audience as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been doing a lot of like drivers' fun facts, especially because there's so many new fans, you know, so many people joining the fandom so that they can get to know the drivers a little bit more, not just by watching Drive to Survive, of course. And I do some travel guides for people that go to the Grand Prix so that they can know what to say, where to go, what to eat. And yeah, basically, I just moved to a new city. So I'm trying to go to all sorts of motorsports events so that we can give our followers a bit more of other categories, and especially to show that Mexico does have the ability to host other categories and to have really talented drivers, that not everything in motorsports is Formula One, you know? So yeah, that's my new project right now.
That's fantastic stuff. And I look forward to seeing more of your content and what you're going to be getting up to. As I said, guys, definitely would recommend checking out Manena's content. Leave it in the show notes and also in the description for those of you watching this on YouTube. Definitely check her out and subscribe to her content. You certainly will not regret it. Now, Manena, obviously, a few news stories have been doing the rounds. The first of which is regarding the huge announcement from Audi Sport on their intentions in joining Formula One. And as we suspected, Audi were going to be naming a formal entry of their brand for 2026. And it looks like they are going to be doing so after acquiring a partnership with the Sauber Formula One team, currently occupied by Alfa Romeo, who we know are going to be stepping away from Formula One in a few years' time. And that pretty much has taken the form, according to Audi on their Twitter page. And I'm just going to bring it up, the quote from their tweet, where it says, Audi x Sauber, the strategic partnership with the Sauber Group, is the next important milestone on our road to Formula One. The Swiss squad will be competing as an Audi factory team, I should say, from 2026, in line with the new engine regulations. Basically meaning, guys, it looks like it's going to be a very similar partnership to what Alfa Romeo had with Sauber, only this time it's going to be running an Audi power unit from their own factory. So that's a very exciting announcement. It's nice to get a new brand, not necessarily an additional team, which I think more people were kind of hoping for, but that never really looked like it was on the cards with Audi or with Porsche, mind you, who look like they're going to try and acquire a stake in Williams as well. What are your thoughts on this announcement, Manena? Are you looking forward to seeing Audi join Formula One?
So much. I mean, I think Audi and Porsche are from the brands of cars that I've been looking forward to seeing in Formula One the most. Because I don't know, I just love them. I've always felt kind of related to them in a way. And yeah, I mean, there were so many rumors about Sauber leaving Formula One and Audi coming in, and eventually the rumors came true. And I read this like note the other day on Motorsport Italy in which Audi said that they're looking to win in Formula One, like a championship, on their third year in the category, and that they would love to have Carlos Sainz or any experienced driver on the team. So imagine if Carlos Sainz finally gets their victory with Audi. That would be so great. As in, for if they're going to take like a big role, I don't think so. I don't really, like you said, I don't think the team is going to change its name, especially because Audi and Alfa Romeo are both car brands. So it doesn't really make much sense. You would have to choose either one name or the other one. And Audi is only really coming to manufacture their engine, which has me thinking, is Alfa Romeo going to leave the Ferrari Junior Academy? You know, like, is it going to stop being like the passage to Ferrari in Formula One? That's like something that people should be asking themselves as well. There's going to be changes by 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the landscape of Formula One is going to change a lot in 2026. How that's going to look, of course, we've just gone through a massive change with the technical regs for 2022, and by and large, they have proved to have been a massive hit with the fans. And of course, there's going to be a lot of excitement for new car brands coming in, not necessarily as new teams, as I said already, something that we would have preferred. But I know there's been a lot of reluctance from those currently within the sport that are trying to prevent new teams coming in. And Audi and Porsche in particular have always preferred the idea of buying into an existing team rather than create one themselves. Financially, it probably makes more sense for them to do that.
Yeah.
As you mentioned already, very bold ambitions. You mentioned by 2028, their third season, they would like to be successful. In your mind, Manena, how realistic do you think that is? Because I know we should never really rule out a team with high ambitions. I know Mercedes bought into the Brawn team, who were already champions, so they already had a team that was already proven successful, and of course it didn't take them very long to achieve that. Red Bull bought into Jaguar many years ago, and it took them a while to become a championship winning team, so it is possible. But how realistic do you think that Audi could achieve a championship in its first 3 years? It does seem a very overwhelming task with a team like Sauber that they're going to be buying into.
I mean, let's keep in mind that Audi, I'm pretty sure that they're not just going to manufacture engines. They're also most likely going to come as a sponsor as well. And Formula One has proven that with money, anything is possible. So I think that it's not so unrealistic because once again, by 2026, all of the regulations are going to change. Audi has experience in other motorsports categories and they do well. And then again, German engine manufacturers are really good and they have proven to be extremely good. We have Mercedes, we have BMW, we have so many German engine manufacturers that have done so well. And I don't know if this is just a rumor, but it's something that I heard. A lot of people have said that if Mercedes is good at manufacturing their engines, Audi is even better.
Well,
so if that is the case, if that's the case, I think they could. Because, I mean, Formula One teams rotate over and over and over again. The only team that has actually ever stayed at the top, and mostly because of how historical they are, is Ferrari, you know? Like McLaren has won so many championships and then they go down and then they come back up. Same thing has happened with Williams. So I don't know, like anything can happen. I mean, Alfa Romeo has won championships in the very, very past, but like, so I don't know. I think it can happen again this season.
Yeah,
only time will tell, like you say.
No, absolutely right. And maybe I'm sort of underselling it a little bit. And I think it's a really good point that you made that, you know, the German manufacturers do have a history in Formula One of being successful. Mercedes is a prime example of that. If Audi turn out to be better than Mercedes, that's going to be one hell of an endorsement or one great car that they're going to be having. So for me, whilst I totally accept that, and I think if you chucked more money at the Sauber team, they may be able to produce a lot more than they currently are. I think it's no secret that money has always been something that, regardless of whether it's Alfa Romeo or Sauber or even BMW Sauber in the past, it's always struggled to compete with the top teams. In a cost cap era or a budget cap era, providing that, you know, everyone sticks to the rules in the future and stuff like that, not, you know, throwing shade at anyone, but it would be more advantageous for them to try and come in now rather than come in the past when teams were spending as much as $350 million. It's a lot easier to do that now. So yeah, maybe
so much easier. And they're already working on their engine since now. They already have around, 100 people working on the engine for 2026. So they're already preparing themselves, you know?
Well, they'll have to, because I think from what we learned from the turbo hybrid era before, that unpreparedness is definitely the enemy of progression in this case. And this was the case for Honda. It took them so long to catch up. And it's why Mercedes ultimately had such an advantage over the rest of the field. They were just so much better prepared for that. So it's definitely going to be exciting. You've already mentioned Carlos Sainz as a driver that you wouldn't mind seeing driving the new Audi and perhaps being successful.
I didn't say that. They said that.
Well, I mean, you seem to light up when you mention Carlos Sainz. I know he's one of the drivers that you particularly favour.
Which woman doesn't?
Well, each to their own, I suppose. But you know, it's going to be interesting. I'm wondering if there are any other drivers in there that you think might fancy driving in the Audi in 2026.
I would like to see Pierre Gasly there, you know? And that's, Valtteri Bottas, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Schumacher even, you know, with German. I would really like to see Mick there. And these drivers that I've just mentioned are drivers that I feel that if you write the name Audi on top of them, they would look good with that name, you know? Because I feel that looking at drivers, a name or a team comes to mind when you look at them, you know? And it's not just necessarily the team that they're at right now, but like, I don't know, I could see Lando Norris and like Alpine. Don't ask me why, but I could see him there as well. I don't know. But like stuff like that.
Well, it
or
could
like
do, yeah.
Mick and Mercedes, I would definitely see that as well, but I would rather have him in Audi.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher's a driver that was mentioned, I think, by some people at Audi as a driver they would like to have in their car. Of course, being a German driver as well, perfect opportunity for a marquee driver with a Schumacher name to be associated with Audi that would certainly produce headlines. But of course, Mick Schumacher, in order to do that, is going to have to try and stick around in Formula One for a few more years, something that at this point in time is not really guaranteed. We don't even know if he's going to be on the grid next season. So certainly interesting. But guys, let us know in the comments section about your thoughts on Audi. Are you optimistic that they can turn the Sauber outfit into world champions or race winners? And also, which drivers would you like to see drive for Audi when they first take the grid in 2026? Plenty of exciting stories to come from that, I have no doubt.
Very much.
One thing I did want to talk to you about, Manena, whilst we've got you here on the show, and of course you've been a huge advocate for not only the progression in equality and the movement for more women to be involved in motorsport, which by and large has been very, very successful on a content creators platform, you know, by no doubt, you know, you have been a big part of that. How have you been feeling about the news regarding W Series? Because of course, for a lot of people that may not be aware, W Series now has it ceased to exist as we currently know it. It was a huge part of most Formula One weekends. We saw a lot of great women drivers showing their skills and driving to the limit. A lot of them associated with Formula One teams in one capacity or another. You know, some great drivers like Alice Powell, Jessica Hawkins, for example, Jamie Chadwick, a three-time champion who, of course, whilst it was inevitable she was going to win the title anyway, that process sped up whilst when the season was announced it was not going to continue for the final 3 rounds owing to a lack of funding. How have you reacted to the news? Because it's probably not for me to say, being a man, that wouldn't understand this to the same degree as a woman would, but it seems very, very disappointing that a platform that has encouraged women and allowed women to see that there are opportunities in motorsport for them on a level playing field, that opportunity seems like it's been taken away from women very, very cruelly for something that perhaps doesn't cost as much as some people feel that it is.
100%. And if I'm honest with you, Adam, it's always nice to hear men comment in regards to this types of things as well. Just as we're commenting about Formula One and we're women, it's nice to see men commenting about W Series as well. It was very disappointing. And I mean, in a way, the drivers were hinting at us that the category was going to disappear because there was this one driver that went to work for Aston Martin at the factory, and then Jamie Chadwick had this whole rumors going on that she was moving to Formula 3 or probably even IndyCar or something. There was so many crazy rumors going out there. And I saw so many drivers joining other categories, which to me, it was a little bit strange, but I was like, oh, well, maybe she doesn't want to be there anymore. Or maybe this one is too good to still be there. Because I would have wanted to see more diversity in the sense that I would have wanted, now that Jamie Chadwick was going to join another category, to see who had the possibility of winning. Because we had only 3 seasons and the 3 were won by the same driver, which that just demonstrates how much out of series she is. And I don't know, I feel it's in a way a little bit sexist as well, because there's so many smaller categories out there that have mostly men in them, and doesn't matter who it is, but they still have a certain sponsor, which keeps the category running. And then you have this category, which has become so big and had so many ex-male Formula One drivers behind it, helping with the creation and all that, and not being able to have enough sponsors, which, like you said, it wasn't even that much money compared to so many other categories. So I don't know, it's just sad. It was just like the great platform for women to prove their talent and to get more opportunities in motorsports. So I don't know. I mean, now it's going to be harder for women to join other categories that are mostly male based. And from those 20 drivers or 30 drivers, 25, how many numbers there were in W Series, from all of those, there's going to be like 3 or 4 that are actually going to join another category. So it's a little bit sad.
No, I completely understand that. And, I've seen a lot of series in the past come and go, mostly series that were just gimmicky. For example, A1GP, you might not remember that, which was about celebrating a World Cup of Motorsport, or a hypothetical one, which was pretty much a feeder series. I mean, one driver you'll remember for that was Nico Hulkenberg, who won that series many years ago when he was just a youngster. And it was a platform for him to get into likes of Formula 3 or Formula 2, or they existed as GP2 at the time.
Yeah.
And then eventually into Formula 1. There was a Super Formula series, which was basically the equivalent of having a favourite football team branded on a car, for example, Liverpool or Galatasaray or Real Madrid, for example, teams like that. It served no purpose really in trying to get people into better places. It was just a glorified series that people just chucked money at, and then got boring after a while because there was really no end game. With W Series, however, it did feel like this was, I don't want to say W Series was the solution, because
no, not at all,
but it was certainly a step in the right direction, and it was a platform to allow women drivers or women involved in motorsport to have an opportunity to probably obtain the one thing that they needed, or 2 things that they needed, and that was exposure on a global stage in a sport which until recently had completely ignored them or not given them a fair chance beforehand, and also the money aspect as well, something that you've mentioned already, and perhaps is the number one issue here, the lack of money, the lack of sponsorship. I mean, in your mind, how did you see the impact of how W Series was helping women get more exposure? Because I'll be brutally honest with you, I hadn't followed drivers like Jamie Chadwick before she'd come into W Series. But the fact that she's dominated that series so much, I don't know if she's going to be good enough to get into Formula One day. The jury will always be out on that until it either happens or it doesn't. But I would say if there was one woman right now that should have a go at trying to do it in the junior categories like F3 and F2, without doubt, it's definitely her. And she should be given that sponsorship. And I think she's earned it. But sadly, despite being involved in the Williams team as well, she hasn't been given that opportunity. So how have you seen the impact of the W Series for women in motorsport? Has it given them more opportunities, or do you feel that it hasn't been able to achieve what some women would have hoped in terms of giving them more opportunities to move up the ladder.
I mean, before I get into that, we had Jamie Chadwick test for Williams, right? And there have been no other woman since Susie Wolf, which I believe was in 1994, that hadn't tested for a Formula One team, you know? And that's what I like about Williams. That's why I think it's a team that should never disappear, because we also had, what was it, the second woman team principal in Formula One? I mean, not even team principals are there those many. But sadly, anatomically, I mean, men and women are different. Men have so much more resistance when it comes to high pressure sports. And the only reason why motorsports is a sport is because you actually have to stay fit and train in order to be able to, you know, endure so many hours in a car driving under the sun or under impossible conditions. So I think that in a way they saw that, I mean, women anatomically are not as strong as men in that sense, which is sad because it's doesn't even have to do with you being a woman or you being a man, you know, it just has to do with you as a woman endure a lot less things, and not mentally, but physically. So that doesn't necessarily mean that just because, like you said, Jamie Chadwick is out of series amongst women, it doesn't necessarily mean that she will be out of series amongst men. Like, I would really love to see her compete in Formula One just to see up to where she can actually reach.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely right. Yeah, I agree with you.
So I think that's probably one of the reasons why they removed this category. Because if they opened it, number one, the fact that there was a category just for women kind of segregated women on its own, even though that wasn't the main purpose. There was already segregation, unwanted, unconscious segregation, but there was some segregation in a way. And then two, what is this, like Formula 2? So the winner eventually reaches Formula 1? Like, that's practically impossible. But they had said, which I don't really see it happening, that if there was a driver that won the championship at least 2 times, she would automatically be moved to Formula 3. And I don't really see Jamie Chadwick being announced on any Formula 1 3 team, you know? So I don't know, like, probably this had so much to do behind the scenes, things that we weren't really seeing. Women not having the DNA, the same DNA as men to drive. And it's not even about good driving, bad driving, fast driving, slow driving. No, it's about endurance, you know? I don't know. It probably had to do with that. It probably had to do with the issue of, okay, and then if we have this woman winning all the time, where are we going to send her? What are we going to do with her? What are we going to do with the rest of the women? Like, yes, we're making these women more known to the world, but what's going to happen to them? Are they always going to be at W Series? You know? So I don't know. So probably like the sponsors didn't see much future, unfortunately. And that's probably, and this is all just an opinion, of course. I'm not saying this is why, but for me, whenever something disappears, there's always a more deep reason, especially when it's something as powerful and strong as this. It probably had to do more with the sponsors not wanting to invest in it anymore because of other reasons. Not necessarily because they didn't believe in the category, but what were you going to do with all those women after?
No, absolutely right. And, sure, opinion is absolutely fine. You're more than happy to have you express that on this show because it's important. It's important to understand the value of series like the W Series and opportunities in Formula One for other women as well. And not just yourself, but to inspire the next generation of young girls and young women with an interest in motorsport being made to, well, not being made to feel, but understanding that there is a route for them and there is a home for them in motorsport. Yeah. It may not necessarily be Formula One, but opportunities are definitely there for them just as much as they are for young boys in the same regard.
Exactly.
And I'm sure for young boys, they don't have to go too far if they want to work in motorsports to find the right avenues. But for women, it's probably a different story altogether, smashing glass ceilings and everything that comes with that. Money is a big part of that. If anything, it's probably the number one factor that is needed in order to make it, regardless of where you want to go. I mean, I can chuck a few names at you. Manisha Kaltenborn, the former CEO and team boss at Sauber, the first Formula One team.
The first female team
female
principal.
That's right, yeah, in 2013. And Jessica Hawkins, obviously a big part of the Aston Martin team and a W Series driver herself. Jamie Chadwick, we've already been talking about. Danica Patrick, former IndyCar driver and NASCAR driver as well, very successful in her career. A few others like presenters like Naomi Schiff, a former W Series driver, still does motorsport now, and she's a fantastic presenter. Great addition to the Sky team with the likes of Natalie Pinkham and Rachel Brooks already established there already. So, and let's not forget Hannah Schmidt at Red Bull. The head strategist.
She's a legend.
Absolute goddess of strategy. So
Very
it's just
much.
prime examples of those wonderful women in all those different fields, that there is room and there should be opportunities for women to come through. It's never going to be an issue of quality, because these people have proven that if you are dedicated enough and with the right opportunity and backing, you can make it. I think Jessica Hawkins said in Austin to Ted Kravitz that it's not just enough to have one woman there as a token jester. You need to have opportunities to encourage more women to come forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you continue to do that, you will see the best and brightest make their way forward, as have many men done in the past. So I suppose my question really on this one, Manena, is what should Formula One be doing? Should Formula One now get involved and start investing more? Because Sir Lewis Hamilton pointed this out and he felt F1 should be investing more. It's part of the F1 weekend, and a lot of F1 weekends we see the W Series as one of the supporting acts. So now
they were going to come to Mexico, and I was so excited, and now they didn't. And last season, same thing for COVID, and I was like, well, when am I going to finally be able to watch the W Series race? Well, now never.
Well, no, absolutely right. I mean, obviously, forgive me, but I completely forgot that they were meant to be going to Mexico. I know Abu Dhabi was meant to be. See, this is the thing. Abu Dhabi was meant to be a huge event, because obviously, in the past, not, to condemn them on this, but women have had literally next to no opportunities to do things like that in most countries, let alone countries like that, for example. And this was going to be a huge crowning moment for women to sort of break that glass ceiling and show that in all walks of life all around the world that this is something that is growing. And now that has been cruelly taken away. For me, I don't know, I think Formula One definitely have to get involved, and if they want to save this series and show that they are willing to support the movement for women to get more opportunities in motorsport and be on a more level playing field to their male counterparts, this is a perfect opportunity for them to do it. And not just do it in the sense of keep the series going and fund it, but get to a point where someone like Jamie Chadwick doesn't have to win 3 W Series championships before she gets an opportunity. I mean, the whole point of the series was if someone wins the title, they should have enough money to, at the very least, fund an opportunity in Formula 3 or Formula 2. She's been in it 3 years, dominated the field, and still needs extra sponsorship in order to make that a reality.
See, that's what I really like about IndyCar. This season, I think they have 2 or 3 women, which is great. But in my opinion, this whole Black Lives Matter movement that Lewis Hamilton started is great. And that was more, I feel, related to the world, not so much necessarily to the drivers, because this season we have a lot of diversity. I mean, we have a Japanese driver, a Chinese driver, Lewis Hamilton, which, I mean, his mom is white, but his dad is black, So we have like this mixed race driver. We have a Latino driver. We have a lot of European drivers, and we have an Australian driver. But what I'm trying to say is that there's so much diversity on the grid that I think in a way you kind of don't even look at the color of the skin or the race of the people. Same for teams. Teams are so full of mixed races. I mean, we have a Mexican engineer driver in Mercedes. We have Asian drivers in Williams. So there's so many mixed races in the teams that you don't even go like, oh, the Chinese guy. Oh, the black guy. No. Oh, the Latino guy. No, you just go like, oh, the guy and the girl. Like, I feel that's what should be the next step. Not mention like, oh, the man and the woman. No. Just the engineer, the driver, the team principal, like, because women are really good as engineers. They've proven to be really good as strategists as well. They're very good at social media. So instead of looking at sexes, just look at professions. So, because a lot of teams feel so proud to have women in their team. Yeah, that's not something to be proud of. That's something that you should simply have. Like any other profession in life, lawyers don't tell you, yeah, we have a female lawyer and we have a male lawyer. No, they just tell you we have a lawyer. So for me, that would be like the next thing that Formula One should do. Stop segregating in sexes, just segregate in positions, job positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Very powerful stuff. And obviously, I must, commend you for being very bold and open about your opinions on these sorts of things. I know it's something that people often try to hide a little bit, or they try to sort of filter it a little bit because they've out of fear of someone taking it the wrong way or someone being offended by these things. And it's important to have an open, honest discussion about these things. I don't think there's any shame in admitting that there's been some issues in the past or that there's still a way to go. I think it's the nature of Formula One. If you stand still, you're going backwards.
And sorry to interrupt you, Adam, but social media has created such a twisted idea of what offends people and what doesn't. Nowadays, everything offends people. So are you just going to stay quiet all the time just because someone's going to get offended? I mean, someone's always going to get offended anyway. And there are some things that are a reality. I'm actually reading this psychological book of 13 things strong women don't do. And the author wrote something like, there's some things that you can change about yourself, like certain aspects of your personality that you don't like so much, the size of, like, the length of your hair or the way you look in a way, but you can't change the color of your eyes. You can't change your height. You can't change the size of your shoe. You can't change your nationality. You can't change the color of your skin. Like, calling someone a certain thing doesn't necessarily have to offend other people because it's visible things that nobody is really criticizing you for. Whether you're white, olive skin, tan, a little bit more yellow or golden, or however you want to call it, caramel. I mean, the color of the skin is something that's factual. I don't really think that somebody should get offended for being called white, Latino, Asian, Black. What people get offended is not the name or the color of the skin that you're using. It's more like what's behind it. And that's where people should be careful of not using offensive language, or offensive actions. But the color of the skin is something that is just there and that nobody can really change. So yeah, that's, I don't even know how to close this argument, but I hope I made myself clear.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think the lesson really is, or the rule of thumb, if we like, progressively going forward, if we can sort of establish one, is it's important to speak out on these issues and also be brave to call out things when they're not right, or not accept that just having, as Jessica Hawkins mentioned, as a token gesture, or just having one woman here, one woman there, it's not the success. It's not the end of the story. We need to create platforms. We need to create opportunities. There needs to be an open discussion and action, more importantly, in creating an environment which allows anyone from all walks of life, whether they be a man or woman or other genders, for example, if you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, for example, if and all different types of diverse groups, wherever you come from, to have the same opportunities regardless. And I think when we bring it back to the W Series, for example, this is a series that looked like it was gaining traction. We had influential characters like Caitlyn Jenner investing in a team and creating opportunities there. For that now to sort of fall to the wayside temporarily, I personally think Formula One should definitely get involved and make this a series that not only allows women an opportunity to show their skills on a global platform, but also provide that sponsorship, that funding, that opportunities, that investment, you like, to make sure that the aftercare for women that are successful continues into the junior categories and maybe one day
100%.
in Formula One. So, but guys, let us know your thoughts on that one regarding W Series, if you think Formula One should get involved and fund the series, and what you think you could do if you could improve W Series or make it better in that regard. What would you like to see for that series? We should move on because we have talked quite a lot about stuff not to do with the Mexican Grand Prix weekend. So let's swiftly move on to that part of this podcast episode, Manena. And we've already talked about Checo Perez a lot in this episode. A driver I'm pretty sure you'll be happy that wins this weekend. I'm sure a lot of people in Mexico will be delighted if he wins this weekend. Let's talk about Max Verstappen, his teammate, a driver who's already won the World Championship as a driver. Red Bull have now won the Constructors' Championship after their victory in Austin. Had a great battle with Sir Lewis Hamilton in Austin. Probably the first time we saw those two lock horns in almost a year, but it feels like such a long time given how this season has gone. What are his thoughts going into the weekend, in your opinion? Because he's got that record now where he's on the cusp of not only... he's actually, I should start that again. He's on the cusp of breaking the record for the most victories in a Grand Prix season now. He only has to win one more race to do that, to beat better Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel. So what do you think his thoughts are going into this weekend? Is he going for the win, or is he going to play second fiddle to help his teammate win on home soil?
Oh my gosh, I am so nervous precisely because of that, because there's only 3 races left. And if I'm honest with you, I think that Max Verstappen can win the 3 races that are left. So if he looks at it that way, I think, in my opinion, what I've seen of Max Verstappen, yes, he's aggressive. Yes, he's gotten involved in fights, but he's never really done anything too serious, in order to call him a bad human being. Quite the contrary. I think he's one of the most real and human drivers. And I think that he's from those type of people that when he likes somebody, he would do anything to protect the person. And if he doesn't like somebody, he would do the total opposite, But I think him and Checo have grown so much to like each other, to respect each other, to help each other, that it would be the best way for Max Verstappen to pay Checo Perez back for everything that he's done for him. And as Helmut Marko said, I mean, Max Verstappen already won. Now what they're looking for is for Checo Perez to get the second place. And right now, Charles Leclerc is precisely on top of Checo Perez by around 2 points, but he's on top of him. So maybe the team will actually help Checo to win so that he can take an advantage over Charles Leclerc and then eventually end up in that 1-2 positions that Red Bull so much wants. Hopefully my theory is correct, because then again, I mean, Max Verstappen is probably one or the most competitive driver on the grid. And for him, it doesn't matter that he's already world champion. He just wants to keep winning so that he'll just want to win again. Let's hope that's not the case. So, I don't know.
Well, I mean, we have seen these acts of kindness or acts of, not necessarily generosity, but paying your teammate back, if for lack of a better way of putting it. Sir Lewis Hamilton obviously doing it a few years ago with Valtteri Bottas in Hungary, when whilst he was fighting for a championship, mind you, in 2018, when he gave a third place back to Valtteri when he was trying to go after Vettel but was unsuccessful. We've seen examples of Michael Schumacher in 2002 at the US Grand Prix, where he slowed down for the Grand Slam finish but allowed his teammate Ruben Barrichello to take the crown after earlier in the season Barrichello let Schumacher win in Austria, when that was a very difficult day for Ferrari when they orchestrated that one. So we have seen a few occasions this year, Checo Perez in particular, making way for his teammate to help him in the championship race. One most notably at the Spanish Grand Prix, when Checo was actually in the title race, but the decision was made for Max to get not the favoritism, but getting the number 1 spot. And we haven't seen many opportunities where Max can repay that generosity to his teammate. So perhaps this is a great opportunity for him to do that. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he did that for his teammate. Perez himself this season has had a very mixed bag this year, because there have been some real highlights. We've had the pole position at Jeddah, where he looked very, very good. Ultimately was unlucky not to get the win that day. One in Monaco, of course. One in Singapore. Loves a street circuit, Checo Perez. Now, Mexico.
He's really good at street circuits.
Yeah, Mexico, the Autodromo at Mexico. It's a circuit that does act a lot like a street circuit. It's very high altitude, a lot of 90-degree corners. I think it does. I mean, if you take out the first straight, that really long straight, the rest of the circuit does behave like a street circuit. So you do tend to favour the characteristics of having high downforce. As I said, because it's high altitude, you can get away with running more downforce on your car without it being so draggy. Because of that. So that may play to Checo's advantage this weekend. And with all that said, Manena, is it too bold perhaps to suggest that Checo might fancy himself as the favourite on home soil?
Let's hope so. I mean, because I love the Mexican Grand Prix because it's my country Grand Prix, but I have to admit, it's not necessarily the most exciting race of the season. It's probably a little bit flat. Yes, like you said, it's got like this whole like gravity stuff and the altitude and all of that, which makes it exciting because some drivers that can normally perform really well in European circuits probably don't perform so well here. So for me, it would depend a lot on qualifying. Because if you look at last season, there were basically no overtakes except from like probably Checo Perez and one or two other drivers. Like last season, the Mexican Grand Prix was much more exciting in the middle of the grid. Or if you looked at the battle between Checo Perez and Lewis Hamilton, which was an amazing battle going on, but Max Verstappen won by 26 seconds. I mean, he could have basically given another lap, like half a lap, and he would have been so much more ahead of any other driver. So for me, it would depend a lot on how he does in qualifying. Let's hope the pressure doesn't get to him, because there's only so little things that you can do for strategy-wise for a driver to overtake, because in the end, it comes up to the driver. I don't know if I made that very clear, but Mexico is not the easiest circuit to overtake because it's very easy to gain a lot of advantage over the other drivers. So at least the first part relies solely on Checo Perez and how he does in qualifying.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, qualifying is going to be quite important this weekend. Of course, that huge run down to turn one is going to be quite intimidating for the driver that ends up on pole position. So we may get a surprise in terms of who actually wants to be on pole. We may see a few drivers strategically try and put themselves on the second row of the grid, for example, to try and get a better run into turn one. We'll have to wait and see. In these bigger cars, it's going to be a very tight squeeze, as we've often seen in previous first laps. So that's going to be one to look out for. But yeah, plenty to think about for this weekend. Another team that you're quite fond of, Ferrari, who have been struggling for a while in terms of trying to get that win. They've been unanimously beaten by Red Bull this season through many different factors, mostly, car development, reliability, of course. The drivers.
For me, it's been mostly strategy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could literally name the list. It's a very, very long one this season. But, going to somewhere like Mexico, Ferrari haven't won here at Mexico, particularly since we've returned since we've returned to Mexico.
Right.
I think you'd have to go back to the 1990s when Nigel Mansell was driving for Ferrari. I think the last time they won there. I might be mistaken. Or Gearhart.
No, it was.
Yeah,
I mean, mostly British drivers have won in Mexico.
I'd have to check. I mean, if someone knows, let me know in the comments. I think it was either him or Gerhard Berger's. It's probably one of those drivers for Ferrari many, many years ago, but certainly not recently. And it's a team that if anyone needs a win to boost their confidence, not necessarily going into the end of the season, but for next season, you probably think Ferrari are probably hoping that they can get one before the end of the season. How likely do you think Ferrari are to win this weekend's Grand Prix? What are their chances, Manena?
No, I don't see it likely at all, if I'm honest with you. For me, the opportunity was for Carlos Sainz and Austin. what a shame that first corner. Like, I started watching the Grand Prix a little bit later because, as I was telling you before we started filming, I was at the NASCAR parade and then my Uber canceled on me and I arrived late to the viewing of the Austin Grand Prix. So when I got there, it was lap 8, I believe, and I saw Carlos Sainz was out. And I was like, what's happening? He had pole position. Like, what is happening? And they told me, oh, it wasn't even the first lap. It was in the first corner. Like 10 seconds into the race, Carlos Sainz is out. I was devastated. And for me, that was his opportunity to win because they both have different ambitions for the end of the season. And Jacques Leclerc said what he wanted, his goal is to end second place. And Carlos Sainz said, I don't even care what position I end up in. My only goal from here to the end of the season is to win another Grand Prix. And I think that opportunity is kind of gone. So, I mean, I hope Ferrari surprises us this weekend, but I think Red Bull and Mercedes have proven that they're really, really strong teams in this circuit. So I don't really think Ferrari will do that great, if I'm honest.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, given their track record, not just at this circuit, but also, you know, in the past at some other circuits this season, Ferrari have struggled a lot in the second half of the season now. If that's because of the new TD that came into effect, which has really hindered their car, I think it has. Ferrari are quite adamant that it hasn't, but I think the results and the form speak for itself, that something has gone horribly wrong in the second half of the season on car performance. One thing that we could all agree at the start of the season was never necessarily an issue. You know, it was never a problem that Ferrari weren't quick enough. But
I think it wasn't an issue because Ferrari was the only team that was preparing for this season. So Ferrari is really strong. I mean, I think we're all underestimating them. I mean, they're in second place. We're talking as if they were in like the 8th place, you know?
I mean, is that progress for you though? Like second, is that progress for Ferrari?
No, there hasn't been much progress. I mean, I do think that the new engine is slightly more dominant than the one on the first part of the season. What has been less dominant are the strategies, which is where I wanted to go with my comment of the first part of the season. They seemed so strong because they were the only team that was actually preparing for this new regulations and all of this. So you have teams like Red Bull struggling so much, teams like Mercedes, you know, like the big teams struggling, trying to adjust and adapt to these new regulations. Some teams did it faster than others. So I think that's why we saw Haas and Ferrari and probably even Alfa Romeo, you know, so strong at the beginning because they were the teams that had worked with Ferrari for a season that they were already preparing for. Now, I think that they shouldn't worry so much on their car because Italians are great engineers. What they should worry on is on strategies. That, for me, is what really seems to sabotage them. We have Silverstone. Like, Carlos Sainz won that race because of his own strategies. Charles Leclerc was trying to follow the team's strategies and the team had none. And Carlos Sainz did his own thing and ended up winning. So I don't know. That's something that they need to change. Ferrari is very all Italian, so maybe they should start hiring other nationalities as well.
Yeah, I think the issue always with hiring other people from other nationalities at Ferrari is it's always difficult for them to sort of integrate into the team because, like, for example, James Allison, great example, and it's not a difficult place to work, but James Allison, when he was at Ferrari before he went to Mercedes, a lot of big things happened in his life on a personal level, which meant he had to move back home. So it's very hard for people from different backgrounds and nationalities to establish themselves at a base at Ferrari for the long haul. That's kind of been the issue for Ferrari, to establish that long-term support 100%. Internationally. It's the only team that doesn't have a base in the UK, which makes things very difficult for them in that regard as well. I know people say, "Oh, AlphaTauri have a base in San Marino," but you know, in fairness, they do have other bases across the UK, like Red Bull do, for example, as well, and even Haas to a degree. So it's always been something that Ferrari has struggled with. In terms of the car itself, if I can offer some positives for Ferrari where they may actually do a little bit better this weekend than perhaps some people might be thinking, tyre degradation has been something that's hurt them a lot in the second half of the season. It's been quite obvious that the Ferrari is a better one-lap car in qualifying than it is in the race. It's not able to continue to run the same performance over the race distance compared to the Red Bull and Mercedes, for example, who have really stolen a march on them in the second half. At Mexico, it's a circuit where tyre deg is usually quite low. So it might be a circuit where Ferrari might be stronger. The Ferrari is also a draggy car, not as draggy as the Mercedes, but as draggy one still. This circuit, because of the high altitude, it might allow Ferrari to run a little bit more downforce, which they like to do, which in turn helps preserve the tyres. If you're able to put more downforce, it means you're asking less of the car in terms of loads to go through the corners. So those factors may actually help Ferrari and may actually give them a more competitive car. Again, the other teams have the same advantage at this circuit, but it might help Ferrari a little bit more. So with that in mind, Manena, do you think that might be enough to swing the tide in Ferrari's favour, or do you feel that they still are a little bit short compared to the likes of Red Bull, maybe even Mercedes?
I have no idea, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I have a feeling that Charles Leclerc will perform very nicely. But Ferrari is a new Mr. Saturday. I mean, and that's something I've never understood. If they all have the same tires, why do some teams' tires work less well than others?
Oh, well, you're asking the wrong guy, unfortunately. I mean, I've had a couple of expert aerodynamicists on the show.
In the comments.
So I'd have to ask them, really, for them to weigh in on this one. But if by chance any expert aerodynamicist is listening to this show, and why wouldn't you be, do let us know why certain cars perform a little bit better with the same tyres as others. I mean, it's a great concept because not long ago, there were teams like Ferrari, for example, that wanted to develop their own tyres because they could have characteristics that would suit their car better. But of course, the FIA and F1 didn't want to do that. They want to keep everybody on the same tyre compounds, as it should be, really, because that way you can guarantee fairness and everybody's got the same equipment. Sometimes you do have to keep that sometimes, but it's always interesting. So obviously you're talking about Charles Leclerc. You're backing him for a good weekend. Carlos Sainz, what about him? Could he have better fortunes this weekend than he did last time?
I mean, I think Carlos Sainz is such an unpredictable driver, and not because of him. I think his style of driving is very consistent, but he has so much bad luck. Like, I really do think he's jinxed or something, because it's not normal what happens to him. It seriously is not normal. I mean, Austin, he could have won, and he gets disqualified, DNF'd since the first curve. Like, his car has stopped so many times this season that when it comes to him, it's like the 2022. It's very hard to predict who's going to win, who's going to end up on the podium. Like, my top 10 predictions have never been so hard as this season. I'm seriously struggling. It's the same with Carlos Sainz. He's the whole 2022 regulations. I mean, it's so hard to know where he's going to end up in, because when he wins or he ends up on the podium, it's good luck. And when he doesn't, it's bad luck, because he's a pretty consistent driver, if you ask me. So I have no idea.
Yeah,
I would literally have to watch the race to know.
Well, that's going to be the be all and end all, isn't it? We're all going to have to find out on Sunday when we watch the race in sunny Mexico, of course. But yeah, some really good points about Ferrari there. We'll have to wait and see how they get on. It could be a good weekend for them, but maybe I'm blowing smoke and it might be terrible for them. I'm certainly not an expert, and anyone that's listened to this show will probably agree that I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to predictions either. So you're not alone in that one, Manena, in terms of difficulties with predictions. Mercedes now. Now, last time out, contrasting weekend for George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. George Russell playing bumper cars with Carlos Sainz, and there's been a bit of a tale of his form, really, the last few races where he has certainly struggled, especially when in the wars. So certainly something to talk about in a moment. But I want to talk about Sir Lewis Hamilton. And on the show, I said that last time out in Austin was by far Sir Lewis Hamilton's best performance of the season. I thought it was better than the one at Silverstone. I thought it was better than the one at Hungary. I felt he was very unlucky not to win the US Grand Prix. And it was really great in a way that we've seen with Max Verstappen when Mercedes were dominating, and there's occasional race where he would really push them all the way, throw hell to the wind with his car, risk all the strategy to try and win. And more often than not, it would come up trumps. It was always exciting to see We saw that with Sir Lewis Hamilton. He did get a bit of fortune with, you know, some safety cars at the right sort of time, and obviously Max Verstappen's issue in the pit lane with the Red Bull team, having an issue getting the tyres on properly. Very uncharacteristic of them to do that. But it was a fantastic drive from Sir Lewis, and he was so unfortunate to win. It took everything that Max had in that Red Bull, which has been incredibly powerful this year compared to Mercedes, to get there and take the win at the very last moments of the race. I feel that this could be a weekend where we may see Mercedes, and in particular Sir Lewis Hamilton, get the win. As I said already, this is a circuit where tyre deg is going to be quite low. Not that Mercedes have necessarily struggled with it. Reliability, Mercedes have always been pretty good. They may be even stronger this weekend as a result of that. And it's a circuit where the drag is certainly not going to affect their car. Something that they've really struggled with this year on the W13. It's been a very draggy car. All the elements might come together for them this weekend where, given how well Sir Lewis is driving, and let's not forget George Russell as well, we could finally see Mercedes' first win of the season. And this is a team that's desperately needed a Grand Prix victory. It just feels that as good as they've been, the one thing that always seems to be a constant that stops them winning is Max Verstappen. This weekend, are we going to see something different? Are we finally going to see Mercedes get on the top step of the podium in 2022?
I mean, it could be. Mercedes has always proven to be really good in this circuit, whether it's been Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, or Nico Rosberg. Like, they are really good at the Mexican Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas has never won, of course, but he got the pole position last season, so that's why I mentioned him. And I don't know. I mean, I think we're definitely going to see a Mercedes in the podium. Is it going to be a win? I don't know. Like, I would have wanted to see Lewis Hamilton win in Austin, honestly, because he did an impeccable job. And so did Vettel, of course. And it was so unfortunate that he went from 5th place to 13th. It was so hard. Like, I even struggled to bring the words out of my mouth because last race had so many possible drivers of the day. Even Max Verstappen deserved it. I mean, he's a beast. Max Verstappen is literally unstoppable. This season has proved that the car does have a lot to do with the driver winning, you know, because there's been so many times in which the Red Bull car this season hasn't been as strong, yet Max Verstappen has still managed to win. Last weekend, he started, 7th place, and then he went down to 1st. He dropped down to 6th. He went back to 3rd, and he ended up winning the race. And it seemed as if he did it with no struggle at all. For me, Max Verstappen, even if a lot of people say it's still too soon to say, for me, Max Verstappen is definitely from the top 5 drivers in history. He is literally a driver that is so out of series. And I'm talking talent-wise. I'm not even talking about him being my favorite or anything. I'm just talking about his pure raw talent that also he's been able to polish and better throughout the years. So, responding to your question, is it going to be enough for a Mercedes win this weekend? Could be. I wouldn't want it to be this weekend. Let's leave that to Brazil. But
yeah,
I mean, could be. Lewis Hamilton is getting stronger and stronger. He's like Voldemort, you know? So I don't know. Could be.
With good intentions, mind you.
Oh no, of course. I mean, in the sense that he just gets stronger by the minute, not in any bad ways. No. He's just getting stronger and stronger is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I was just clarifying it for the benefit of our wonderful listeners, of course.
For the benefits of the doubt. We never know.
Yeah, because we know Lewis is a wonderful man. We know that Voldemort isn't a wonderful man, but by comparison. But no,
he's powerful.
Very powerful.
He's a powerful, strong man.
Very powerful indeed. Well, let's be honest. You know, as likable a character as Lewis Hamilton is, I'm pretty sure if he was in a Hogwarts house, he probably would end up in somewhere like Slytherin just because he's a born winner.
Oh no!
You don't think so?
He would be a Hufflepuff. I don't know why. Yeah, definitely.
Why is that?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. Remember what I said at the beginning? What name looks good on top of the driver? Hufflepuff.
Yeah. Well,
Hufflepuff. I would be a Ravenclaw. Which one would you be?
I'd be a Slytherin. I definitely
Oh,
would.
seriously?
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm certainly not a born winner like Lewis Hamilton, but I'm very competitive, and I think a lot of people would probably pick Gryffindor because they probably think, oh, I want to be in the same
Yeah,
house as
because it's
Harry
a
Potter.
popular one.
But I think for that reason, that would probably put people in a Slytherin. The self-interest element as well. I mean, look, there are probably lots of wonderful people. Like we're all speaking about hypotheticals with Harry Potter here. It's a completely different show
Yeah.
now. But no,
But it's British as well,
yeah,
so
true,
there's a
true.
relation.
It's a world school, isn't it, Hogwarts? Although all
I
fictional, unfortunately.
know.
But no, I'd definitely be a Slytherin. I wouldn't be a Gryffindor. I'd just be lying. I'd be a
I'd
hypocrite.
be a Ravenclaw.
It's interesting. Why would you?
100%.
Before we get too sidetracked, but what?
I have
And
no
we'll move on.
idea.
No. Okay. Well, it's
I have
interesting.
no idea. I've always felt identified to that house. I've just put the name on top of my head. And I'm like, yeah, I think this is the one that fits me the most. And I love that it's the only house that has a female team principal, you know,
That's
but I
true.
mean,
That's true.
a female founder. Oh no, wait, Hufflepuff has a female founder as well, right?
Well, the Harry Potter fans are definitely
I
going to
don't.
come for us in the comments if we're wrong on this one.
Mordred
So
Gryffindor, Salazar Slytherin, Rowena Ravenclaw, and what was a Hufflepuff one?
I have no idea.
Anyway,
This
I have no idea.
yeah, I'm going to assume that it's probably right, but I'm sure the Harry Potter fans in the comments section will let us know. But hey, while you're at it,
Well,
guys,
no.
tell us what house you would think that you would qualify for. Also, interesting one. Let's see if someone can do this in the comment section.
Exactly.
I want someone in the comment section to, particularly on YouTube, preferably if they can, to comment every single driver on the grid right now and tell me which house you think they would be in if they went to Hogwarts. This one's for the Harry Potter fans.
I was going to do a TikTok.
You can do it. Well, you do a TikTok, and we'll see some of the comments, and we'll see if any match in particular or how closer we can get. And we'll read out some of the best
Sounds
ones
great.
on Sunday. My panel, Lee and Courtney, when they're on the Sunday review, will have no idea what this is relating to. It will take them by surprise. So we'll see. But yeah, guys, I'm going to challenge you guys. Manena's going to do her TikTok on it. I'm going to challenge you. Comment section on YouTube. List every driver on the F1 2022 grid. Tell me what house they would get into if they went to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Nice little fun little break there. George Russell, of course. As I said, been playing Dodgers.
Slytherin.
Yeah, that's about right, to be fair. But not a bad shout. But George Russell, of course, this weekend kind of needs to sort of, I don't want to say get his act together, but he needs to get back to the George Russell that was more about the speed, the talent, and the great racing. The last few weeks, he's gone a little bit astray. Still doing very well in the championship, mind you, and he's an outsider perhaps for P2 overall. He's not too far away. How do you see him getting on this weekend?
I mean, I think he's gonna do great, if I'm honest with you. As mentioned, it's a shame the podium only has a spot for 3 people, because I think that Mercedes and Red Bull are gonna take the rest of the teams by storm this weekend. Mercedes is such a strong team, and correct me if I'm wrong, but George Russell has finished top 5 in every single race this season except for one.
I think.
Or
Actually,
am
I
I
think.
mistaken?
No, I think it's a few more now. There was a point where he was very consistent, but I know the last few races he has struggled to sort of get in there because he's had grid penalties and stuff like that. But he has been very consistent this year. I think one thing that can be heralded about George Russell is his consistency, particularly at the start of the season.
Yeah, he's the MVP this season.
Yeah, he's certainly up there. He's certainly been up there. So, yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I think, George will have to, I'm sure he probably has, but we'll have to look at what's been going on the last few weeks, try and put that right. But he'll come good again. It's a learning experience. There was always going to be a dip in form, and I'm sure he'll pick it up very good. But he's still doing a great job at Mercedes. He's got more points than his teammate. Plenty of caveats for that. So a nice little battle there for George. He certainly would love to beat his teammate in the championship this year, and who knows, it might be better for him this weekend. McLaren against Alpine. Lovely little battle going on there. Particularly, it's mostly the Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris show right now between them two. A nice little battle between them.
I know.
Fernando Alonso.
Impressive.
It is, yeah. Fernando Alonso
impressive.
getting.
I mean, I think Esteban Ocon has improved so much this season as well than compared to other seasons. And I don't want to be mean to Daniel Ricciardo, especially because he's leaving Formula One, but I think that everything that McLaren has done this season has been thanks to Lando Norris. And I don't know, I think he's just such a strong driver. If Daniel Ricciardo were what he used to be in the Red Bull era, who knows? Maybe it could even be McLaren, the one that would be in second place this season. I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel Daniel Ricciardo has had some really good races, but Lando Norris is just on fire. And yeah, I don't, it's complicated. I would love to see a team like McLaren end right below Mercedes, but Alpine is just strong, you know? So it's going to be like last season. That third place, in this case, a fourth place, is going to be handed out in the last races, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And, you know, Daniel, we went for a roller coaster of emotions this weekend, obviously riding in the paddock last weekend on Horsey McHorse, I believe he called it in the end on a Thursday afternoon, dressed up as a cowboy. And the end of the weekend was very, very somber by comparison. He was quite emotional in his post-race interview. Obviously, he seems to be coming to terms with how difficult things have been for him at McLaren. And obviously, you know, perhaps this may be the last few races we see of him in Formula One. It'd be very, very sad if it happens. Hopefully that's not the case, but it does feel like it has become rather overwhelming for him at the moment. And I can sincerely hope that he's okay in that regard and that he's able to pick himself up. He's a competitor and I'm sure he will. I personally, I don't want to say I've checked out in regards to how I feel about Daniel Ricciardo's form this season. I just think it's a case of we'll just have to wait and see in a few years how things get on. Will he be still in Formula 1 as a reserve driver? We'll have to wait and see. Right now, though, McLaren does need him to pick up his form. If he can find a way to 100%. Do that, former pole position in this race a few years back, if he was able to turn it around and get a great result for McLaren, that would be greatly appreciated. As you said already, Manena, Lando has been absolutely phenomenal this season. Another great performance in Austin, a great recovery drive to get to best of the rest. Amazingly, come out of nowhere, really. And Alpine, whilst it seemed for a while that they had P4 and the constructors nailed on, they've been pegged back a bit now because Fernando Alonso receiving that 30-second post-race penalty, which seemed ridiculous when you think about it, considering that it was more down to the fact that the FIA didn't put out the black and orange flag when he lost his wing mirror. And I mean, that was crazy.
It's just, for me, motorsports, it's so ironic, you know, like I can see how dangerous it can be and how many crashes it can provoke, but nothing bad happened. But then again, if nothing bad happened and they let that pass, then other teams are going to go like, oh, if it happens to me, then I'll leave my driver to keep racing. So it'll kind of become like a bad habit that can create a lot of danger. So I don't really think it's against him. It's more against the action of what happened.
Well,
so in a way, I don't agree, but I do agree. You know what I mean?
No, I understand that point. I think the issue at hand was the fact that the FI or the stewards didn't wave a black and orange flag for Fernando to tell him to come into the pits. And this is what Haas ultimately protested, that he should have done, that it was a dangerous car. And that's fair enough because they did the same to Magnussen in Singapore and in Japan, I think it was as well. And he had to take pit stops. You know, ironically, if Fernando Alonso had taken a pit stop, then he would have lost a lot more than 30 seconds anyway. You know, because they've had to change the part, get that back on the car. So it was a lighter punishment. I think it's just the fact that he was punished for something that ultimately didn't really do wrong. And this is what Alpine were also protesting as well, that they were, you know, they were wrongly punished for this sort of thing. So we'll have to wait and see how things go, whether that will be reinstated or not. But as it stands right now, 6 points between McLaren and Alpine in Alpine's favour. Could go either way. Manena, I'm going to push you for a one-word answer on this one. Who is finishing P4 in the constructors at the end of the season? Is it going to be McLaren or is it going to be Alpine?
Oh my gosh, it's going to be Alpine.
Oh, fair enough. But we'll move on. Just mindful of time on this one. Another battle doing the rounds. Alfa Romeo versus Aston Martin. Aston Martin chipping away bit by bit by bit. They've been picking up points. This car is now good in qualifying and in race trim. And Sebastian Vettel
Good.
especially is driving phenomenally well. Stroll is proving that he's quicker, although he costly mistake last weekend with Alonso, but he's putting himself in the equation once again and driving well other than that one big error. It feels right now Aston Martin are on the verge of passing Alfa Romeo. There's only 1 point between them in the Constructors' Championship, and their drivers and the car, it's all coming together for them at long last. How do you see Aston Martin getting on this weekend?
They're finally becoming what they promised, and I hope they just get stronger. If I'm honest with you, I would love to see Aston Martin on the podium next season, like constantly. I mean, their suit is just gorgeous. I would love to see that uniform constantly on the podium. And who knows, maybe they can get that with Fernando Alonso, right? Um,
Very
that's
true.
a really tough question because Alfa Romeo started really strong and has been consistent in a way, like at least to the level, sorry, where they're at. Whereas Aston Martin was the new Haas, at the beginning of the season and has been growing. Lance Stroll is a lot of the likes of Esteban Ocon. They're both two drivers that you really have to look at them to see how much they're improving. Um, but they've been improving so much. Like Lance Stroll is a really fast driver. And Vettel, oh my God, I can't even talk about him. Like, the more the season comes to an end, I'm not even sad the season is over or coming to an end. I'm sad that Vettel is leaving. I mean, I cried so much when he announced his retirement. I was so sure it was going to happen this season. I just didn't know when. And I was like, this is too soon. Why didn't you let us enjoy the season a little bit more? Think that you would be staying longer. I'm just devastated, if I'm honest with you. And Daniel Ricciardo, I just want him to go so badly to MotoGP. I would love to see him race and motorcycles.
Well, that'd be interesting. I can't really say I've put those two together, really. I was expecting
Yeah,
Daniel.
and he's good at it.
Well, no, apparently, well, you have to take your word on it because I've not really seen if Daniel Ricciardo does motorcycle racing, but fair play. I mean, with Sebastian Vettel, it's quite an interesting one because since, as you already mentioned, he announced his retirement earlier in the season, his form has been very, very good. And he is driving, in my opinion, I think he's driving better now than he perhaps was in his final season at Ferrari. It just seems that he's found that spark, he's found that passion, he's found that joy of being a Formula One driver. I mean, we saw the final lap when he battled with Kevin Magnussen and he eventually won out
Ooh,
and got
that was
those
good.
points. He was celebrating it like he'd won the race. And I, for one,
Absolutely.
I just find it baffling. I just think where has this guy been? Like, if this version of Sebastian Vettel was around last year or perhaps the year before that, maybe he wouldn't be retiring. And perhaps it's one of those that you don't know what you have until you've lost it. And he's feeling really emotional about the fact that he is retiring soon. And
Yeah, I think you
yeah,
have a really good point. I mean, even the drivers are feeling it. There's just so little amount of human beings like him in general in the world, let alone motorsports. Like, he's just such a good soul, and we need so many more people like him in the world. And like even Kevin Magnussen, like it was kind of like a tough battle up to a point in which Vettel could have probably almost gotten penalized. And Kevin Magnussen said, you know what? I don't even care. He's a great driver, and I feel fortunate to have ever raced with him. Like he didn't even care about all the hassle that Vettel was giving him in the race. So I feel that everybody is so emotional. Like the world is not ready to say goodbye to Sebastian Vettel.
no, it certainly isn't. And yeah, it's going to be a very, very sad day in Abu Dhabi. But of course, we're not there yet. We're still going to get to enjoy
Yeah.
Seb for a few more races to come. So it's looking good for Aston Martin. They look favourites right now for that P6. And given how their form has been, I certainly wouldn't bet against them from beating Alfa Romeo right now. Alfa really need to find a way to step up. I'm not quite sure they have the car or even the drivers, with all due respect to Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas right now, to actually do the job. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes down this weekend, but I'm very much backing Aston Martin to get in the points again this weekend. Haas, AlphaTauri, and Williams, of course, that's, I think, where we should end this episode and talk about them a little bit. That battle going on. Haas and AlphaTauri really fighting over P8 at the moment. Haas got a few more points than AlphaTauri last weekend. A lot of confusion amongst F1 fans over what happened really with Mick Schumacher's race. Strategy really didn't help him out. Ultimately, in my opinion, I think Haas kind of messed up with him. Gunther Steiner came out and was quite defensive of his team and saying that, well, Kevin looked after his tyres a lot better than Mick did, went 37 laps on the mediums and ended up in the points, whereas Mick didn't, had the extra stop despite being faster throughout the race, ultimately finished outside. Right now, with Mick Schumacher's future on the line at Haas, it's, in my opinion, it's not really good that when he's trying to demonstrate that he's quicker than K-Mag and do a better job, and these things happen, that the team are kind of doubling down on that by putting more pressure on him and saying he needs to do this, he needs to do that right now. I mean, where do you see that situation right now, Manena? Because it just feels that there's more friction between Haas and Mick Schumacher than a camaraderie when they're trying to sort out a future between the two of them.
I mean, as mentioned a little bit earlier, we never really know what goes on behind the scenes. From what I saw last season at the Mexican Grand Prix, Mick and Gunther seemed to get along really well. But sometimes getting along well doesn't really get the job done, right? So they might be really good friends, but if he's not delivering what the team is expecting, unfortunately, it all relies on his shoulders. And it comes a little bit to the whole Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc situation. Kevin Magnussen is similar to Carlos Sainz in that sense, that they're both much more strategic and a bit more aggressive when it comes to driving. And by aggressive, I don't mean that they try to crash against other drivers. I mean more in the, let's just go for it and get it done, you know? And when it comes to Charles Leclerc and Mick Schumacher, they both seem like they're kind of like really, really sweet, innocent boys, like deep down, like noble hearts, you know? So they rely a lot on the strategies that their team gives them. And if the team doesn't give them the right strategy, then unfortunately, they don't perform the way the team wants. Because even if it is in a way the team's fault that the driver is following their strategy, it should be up to the driver to comment as well on what strategy they think is necessary next, which is something that Fernando Alonso has done, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Max Verstappen. Like, there's so many drivers that choose their own strategies despite what the team is telling them. And it turns out to be even more beneficial for the team than what the team had actually told them to do. Because in the end, it's the driver, the one that's on the car, the one that should really know how it feels like or what they should do next. So I don't know. I feel that they rely so much on the team, and this has definitely not played to their advantage. So I do think that Mick Schumacher could be out next season. I would love to see him in Williams, but that place is most likely for Logan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was going to be my next question, actually, what you thought regarding Mick Schumacher's future, given the fact that Haas now does seem to be the only seat realistically available. I mean, of course, we should never, you never say never. Something might happen in the F2 race with Logan Sargent where he's not able to finish in the top 5. Hopefully, for his sake, that's not the case. I'm certainly not wishing that on him. Hopefully, he has a clean race and gets the super license points he needs to get that opportunity at Williams. It would be massive for American motorsport to have an American driver on the F1 grid, and it seems like Logan Sargent is definitely the favourite for that right now. With Mick Schumacher, as I said, I'm not so sure. I feel that Haas are leaning more towards Nico Hülkenberg, for example, and if
Antonio Giovinazzi, I think.
Well,
it was a shame.
Yeah,
the Austin Grand Prix, the practice one, but
perhaps. But I think that probably, I don't know. It's hard to say really, because you never know how much teams are watching in moments like that, and were they using it as an opportunity to test him out? I mean, obviously it was to complete a mandatory FP1 session for technically a young driver. Not that Giovinazzi is a young driver, but
Pietro Fittipaldi deserves that seat. I mean, for me, it's just his, He's been carried around so many years as a reserve driver and a test driver. He just deserves a seat once and for all.
Yeah.
And but at hats, of course, and hats.
Well, this is it. I mean, so many drivers and clearly not enough F1 seats. There's certainly something that has to be said about that. But this is not a
Yeah.
new topic of discussion for something we've often said about for many years. But those are the breaks in Formula One right now. But it does feel that Mick Schumacher's future, at this point in time, it seems more likely that he's not going to be in Formula One, at least on the main roster next season, but we'll have to wait and see. There's obviously going to be opportunities at reserve seats, but no driver wants to take a year out. Not that it's the worst thing in the world. Just ask Alex Albon, Esteban Ocon.
And Daniel Ricciardo.
And Daniel Ricciardo, yes, of course. He had a...
He's probably going to be Red Bull's reserve driver. There's strong rumors about that.
Indeed there are. But so, plenty of stories going up and down the paddock. Manena, I'm going to push you for predictions now. Of course, you've been on this show a few times now. But for the benefit of our audience, as reluctant as you may be to give your predictions, as hard as that may be, but for the benefit of our audience that are new to this show, of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. But we do predictions at the end where we give our top 3 finishers this weekend and also a bold prediction as well. Something random, something that might be unlikely, but would be pretty spectacular if it occurred. So Manena, as a normal protocol, as our guest, you have the stage. Who's going to be in our top 3 this weekend? And can you give me a bold prediction as well?
Probably unlikely and manifesting. I'm going to give the first place to Checo Perez. Despite popular opinions. Second place to Max Verstappen, just because he's going to help Checo, but if not, he would have been the first place, if I'm honest with you. And third place to Lewis Hamilton. So it's basically the same podium from last season, just different order.
Fair enough. Have you got a bold prediction for us, or is Checo winning bold prediction?
Well, that's my bold prediction, but a bold prediction. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I don't know how accurate it's gonna be, but I'm gonna be giving my 7th place to Yuki Tsunoda.
Okay, I like it. I like the way you think. I mean, Yuki scored points last time out in Austin. It was the first points for AlphaTauri for some time. So,
and I think he did good last Mexican Grand Prix. So,
yeah, I'd have to think back to.
I don't remember either. But no,
neither do I. Oh, well, I certainly hope so. Someone's going to correct us in the comments if we're wrong anyway. So I'll let them benevolently tell us what's going on in that one. But I think that's a pretty decent shout. My top 3. As much as I'd love to agree with you, I just got the funny feeling Max is going to go for the record first. As unpopular as it probably might be to the Mexican fans, but, they love Red Bull, obviously, so they cheered for Max last season. They'll probably cheer for him again, although it depends on who comes second, which I think is going to be Checo as well.
They cheered last season because the options were Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
But now that Checo's in the game, I don't really think they're going to cheer for Max Verstappen, if I'm honest with you.
Maybe. I mean, obviously, I'm sure Red Bull will not be thinking about business up following the passing of co-founder Dietrich Mateschitz, but I'm pretty sure they probably won't want to upset the home crowd from a brand perspective anyway. But look, let's not worry about business too much. It's about motorsport. But yeah, I'm going to go Max first, Checo P2, and I'm going to go Charles Leclerc P3. I think he's going to have a good weekend. My bold prediction, I'm going to go double points for Aston Martin. They should have done it last weekend. I'm going to back him to do it this weekend instead.
I like it. Because COTA and Mexico have similar concepts track-wise. So if you do well in one, you can do well in the other. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And Aston Martin have tried to go down that route. Similar to Red Bull, it seems like it's made tangible progress for them. So perhaps they will be strong this weekend also. But that's all we got time for on this episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and hope you enjoyed it. Something a little bit different. I know we haven't had a guest on for a while, so it's nice to have a very high profile one on like Manena to share her thoughts. Manena, obviously, you've been on this show before. You know how it works by now. But for those people that are new, that are unfamiliar with your content, you now have the floor to plug your show, plug your socials, tell our followers why they should make the obvious decision and go and check out your content.
Well, the obvious decision, it's because it's obvious. Just go and follow my content. No, but I'm everywhere on social media as a girl talks F1. And of course, we create a very open-minded environment in which everybody can express their opinion. It's a lot of empowering women, empowering my own country, motorsports wise, and empowering people all over the world, like proving that Formula One is a very united community and that we can all come together. It doesn't matter where we're from, what our race is, what our sex is. We can all just come together in one community and just share our thoughts respectfully, of course. But yeah, just always sharing what we like and what we do.
Well, if that's not worth a subscribe or a click, then I don't know what is. But there you go. Check out Manena's content, Girl Talks Formula One, on her YouTube channel. Of course, she has a Spanish-speaking version as well. If you are Spanish-speaking, of course, if you followed the podcast this long, I'd be very, very surprised if you didn't speak English well and you spoke Spanish well. But maybe one day I will do a podcast with Manena where we'll just do this purely in Spanish. I could probably...
Oh, I like that.
I could probably blag enough of it to get myself through to the end anyway, but I'm sure Manena would keep me honest anyway. But that being said, guys, if you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast, I should say, before I get my words wrong, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate all of your support and every single one of you that comments on this show, likes, and subscribe to the channel to join the DNF1 family is greatly, greatly appreciated. And we absolutely love making content for you guys. So keep supporting us if you can. If you follow us on your favorite podcasting platform and you want to support us equally, you can do so by giving us a 5-star review. Of course, if you think that we are worthy of a 5-star review. Just be mindful though, if you do it on Spotify, you will have to screenshot it and let us know on our socials on Twitter or Instagram so we can give you a shout out in the next episode. If you listen to us on Apple Podcast, for example, you don't have to worry about that. Give us a 5-star review and we will give you a shout out on the next show. But until next time, guys, when we review the Mexican Grand Prix, please stay safe. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the race and we'll see you on the next episode of the DNF1 F1 podcast. And remember, as always, if you're not first, you're probably DNF1. Take care.
Bye.